26-year-old Nicole Hunsinger is suing her former live-in boyfriend, 25-year-old Brian Moss, for rent, an unpaid loan, and a cell phone.
All rise. Now, this is case number 160 on the calendar in the matter of Hunsinger versus Moss. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated, sir. Have a seat.
Miss Hunsinger, this used to be your boyfriend. You lived together for a period of time. Your complaint is threefold. First, you say that you made a loan to him a little over a year ago. He needed some money for a lawyer and for some fines, and while he paid you back some, he still owes you money.
Yes, ma'am.
Second, that you ultimately broke up with each other. You moved out of the apartment that you were sharing and both contributing to with the understanding that Mr. Moss was going to pay the rent. He ended up not paying the rent, and in order to preserve your credit, you paid the rent because you were also on the lease.
Yes, ma'am.
And then some nonsense about a cell phone. I hate these cell phone cases. You know, I think that they ought to abolish the ability of people to get cell phones for other people. If you can afford a cell phone, you get a cell phone. If you can't afford a cell phone, you don't get a cell phone. Aren't there still things on the street where you can put in a quarter and make a phone call?
I'm not sure. It's been so long.
I think that there probably are, or else you wait until you get home, or write a letter, or use a stamp, or something.
I agree.
But if you can't afford a cell phone out there in television land, don't get one, and don't get anybody else one.
I want a copy of this for my kids.
Would you do that?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get you one.
Thank you.
Anyway, when did you move into this apartment together?
February 13th of '05.
And what was the rent?
$425 a month, everything included.
And your arrangement was that you split the rent?
No, ma'am, we decided to, because I had more bills going out monthly, that he would pay majority of the rent and I would help him pick up whatever was left of the monthly rent.
So how did you deal with that each month?
Every week he would get money from his paycheck, he would put it in an envelope in the apartment. When rent was due, whatever money wasn't there to pay the rent in full, I would put in.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So how much did you put in?
I was anywhere from $50 to $100 a month I was putting in my own money that he was short.
And what were you paying for?
Car loan, insurance, student loans, credit card bills, the cell phones.
Okay. And when did you move out?
I moved out shortly after we broke up on July 1st. I called the landlord, said I was leaving, and told her why.
Why were you leaving?
I found out some stuff that he was doing behind my back, and that did not make me happy. And then we got in an argument. It got heated. I didn't like the situation, so I left.
Did you make any arrangement with him about staying in the apartment, or did you just leave?
I left, and I called the landlord, told her where I was and why I left. She said that if he would agree to go on the lease.
That's hearsay. Now, she left in July.
Yes, ma'am.
When did you leave?
I left August, I believe.
Think carefully.
I think it was September, October.
Think carefully before you give me an answer.
October, ma'am.
August, September, or October?
October, ma'am.
Mr. Moss, I want you to try not to irritate me, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a very low threshold.
Yes, ma'am.
So you left in October.
Yes.
October what?
Beginning of October, ma'am. I'm not sure what day.
I believe it was the 7th.
7th.
Well, the 7th is into October, so you owed rent for. You left in July, so I assume you paid July's rent.
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Why not?
Because he obviously had paid it because they didn't notify me that he didn't.
Did you pay August's rent?
Yes, ma'am.
September?
Yeah, I believe.
Not
Yes,
all of it, ma'am.
Not all of it.
I think you should have stayed with her because she can finish your sentences because you're having these mind lapses.
Yes, ma'am.
How much of October's rent did you pay?
I believe about a little over $200, ma'am.
October.
October, nothing in the beginning.
$425 in October. And how much of September's rent did you pay?
A little over 300, ma'am.
How much?
I ended up having to put in, with his late fees and the remainder of the rent he didn't pay, was $157.50.
Plus the $425 for October.
Yes, ma'am.
And what about November, December, and January? What did the landlord do with November, December, and January? Do you have an agreement with him?
I have their paperwork right here.
Can I see it, please?
And the second page is in bill form, what I paid.
All right, Mr. Moss. Now let's have your defense with regard to this rent, which she paid to the landlord in the amount of $1,275, which covers October, November, and December's rent. Come on. Come.
Well, she ended up moving out in July, leaving me with the rest of the lease, and from what I told the landlord, I figured that since she
Why
left
did she
first-
move out, sir?
We broke up, so she moved
Why?
out. Because she wanted to live somewhere else, I guess.
You think so?
Yes, ma'am.
No,
You don't
ma'am.
think that there was any cause for her to leave?
No, we just broke up, and that was it, and she decided to leave.
Well, so it was an amicable breakup, according to you.
It was just pretty much she broke up with me, that was it.
Listen, do you know what the word amicable means?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir. Was it an amicable breakup? Amicable breakup usually means that two people sit down and say, listen, we have this lease, let's see how we can resolve this. You know, I can stay in the apartment and you leave, or you stay in the apartment and I'll leave, and this is the way we're going to resolve the bills, and this is the way we're going to resolve the loan.
What was amicable at first, ma'am?
It was at first. We agreed on some things, and it was.
What did you agree on? Mr. Moss?
Basically, what I agreed on was that I can, for as long as I could, I can, maintain the rent.
No, Mr. Moss, that's not what you said. What do you mean, as long as you could, you would maintain the rent?
I didn't say I was going to do it until the end of the lease, Your Honor.
Where are you living now, sir?
I'm living in another apartment now, in the same town.
With whom?
Myself,
What's the rent?
$320 a month.
So that's a difference of $100 a month in the rent.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you had paid this landlord $320 a month rent, she would have been relieved of the burden of paying the landlord $1,275, right? The
Yes,
landlord
ma'am.
would have come after her for only a few $100s, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So why didn't you do that? It must have cost you something to move.
It cost me quite a bit to move, but
So why did you move?
I couldn't afford to stay there at that time. I had to borrow from friends just to move to another place. But I couldn't borrow enough to actually maintain there, and then I didn't want to just stay there anymore. It was just...
That sounds like a lot of double talk to me, Mr. Moss.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
What did you need a lawyer for, Mr. Moss?
Identity theft.
Whose identity did you steal?
Father's.
Father pressed charges?
Yes, ma'am.
He must have been really angry with you for something else.
He told me his father was dead.
And later today,
You have another phone now, sir?
Yes, I do.
Good. When did you get it? Look at me. When did you get it?
When did I get it? I don't know.
When did you get it? That's a question. I ask the questions, you give me the answer. When did you get the phone?
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Nicole Hunsinger claims ex-boyfriend Brian Moss owes for rent, a cell phone bill, and attorney fees after he was arrested for identity theft.
Okay. Now let's get to the loan. When did you make this loan and for what?
It was for attorney.
What did you need a lawyer for, Mr. Moss?
I had another court case, Your Honor.
What kind of court case, sir?
Criminal court.
For what?
Identity theft.
And
Whose identity did you steal?
Father's.
Your father's.
Yes, ma'am.
How much money did you rack up before they found out?
1,087, ma'am.
Father pressed charges?
Yes, ma'am.
He must have been really angry with you for something else.
I haven't talked to him about 7 years, ma'am.
apparently he told me his father was dead.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you receive probation in that case?
No, it was, if I didn't get in trouble for 6 months, it was a sponge.
It was what?
A sponge. It was just gotten rid of.
You had an adjournment in contemplation of dismissal for 6 months?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have to pay restitution?
Yes.
And what was the restitution?
1,087, I believe.
And fines?
No fines.
And how much was the
Lawyer.
Lawyer was $1,500, and that was it.
And who gave you the money?
Miss Hunsinger.
But the retainer wasn't all the way borrowed.
Shh.
Sorry.
How much did you pay her back?
I paid for the first few of the monthly payments of the lawyer's fee.
How
Actually,
much?
the loan fee. I'm not 100% sure, man. It was like 4 months.
How many months did he pay you back?
He paid for the first 5 months of my loan payments.
And how much were the loan payments?
They were $113.35 a month.
Why did you stop?
Because she had left, I had lost contact with her. She asked for the phone back, and that was it. And I hadn't seen her since then. I only seen her once or twice. Yes, ma'am.
So at this point, Mr. Moss, we are acknowledging the loan
Yes, ma'am.
in the amount now, according to you, of $2,142.
Yes, ma'am.
See what he said about this in his answer. I didn't hear anything. She never said I had to pay her back.
She didn't. I did that on my own record.
He gave me his word.
Okay. So far, Mr. Moss, I find the following, sir. That you had, according to you, an amicable initial breakup.
Yes.
The discussion was, and this is what I find, not what you say,
Yes, ma'am.
that you agreed to stay in the apartment and she was leaving.
Yes.
And if you agreed to stay in the apartment and she was leaving, that means that you agreed to cover the rent. And you didn't. And I have verification from the landlord that you didn't pay the rent, and that she did, and that, as a matter of fact, you moved into another apartment at practically the same rent. So you really could have stayed there and maybe been shy a couple of $100, not the $1,275 that she had to kick.
Cepat yang tumbuh duduk-duduk dalam video timing, tolong ya, katakan kepada mereka yang di sisi kanan untuk menunggu sedikit supaya kita dapat sedikit kurang. Ini anak muda potong lampu mereka. Ini anak muda potong lampu mereka. Dia membawa kambing ke Diplo, Noplo, dan cucu-cucu tinggal di sana. Tidak ada lagu yang saya tahu. Saya telah melintasi jalan pencuri mencuri lampu supaya kita dapat satu panggilan telepon. Assalamualaikum. Apa yang sedang berlaku? Juga katakan waalaikumsalam, alhamdulillah, doa kepada Allah dan syukur.